Hello, I'm Martin Stringer, and this is a special edition of Primetime Politics. Tonight, our entire program is focused on the Trudeau government's approval of the Trans Mountain Pipeline. We have extensive coverage as the Prime Minister was joined by key ministers to announce the go-ahead for the $4.5 billion pipeline expansion project. We'll also have reaction for you from the opposition here in Ottawa, from Alberta Premier Jason Kenney, and from Indigenous leaders in British Columbia. Prime Minister Trudeau says the necessary requirements for environmental safeguards and Indigenous consultations have been met, and it's time for the Trans Mountain expansion to get underway, with, he predicts, shovels in the ground this summer. He also announced that Ottawa intends to divert profits from the pipeline into green investments, and he says Ottawa's in the process of soliciting possible Indigenous investment in the project. The Conservative opposition in the House of Commons is welcoming the go-ahead, but says it's taken the government far too long to get to this point at the expense of Canada's energy sector. Meanwhile, the federal NDP and the Green parties are disappointed by the Trans Mountain approval, saying it betrays the Trudeau government's environmental promises. And Indigenous groups in British Columbia are vowing to keep up their fight against the pipeline expansion, and they're promising further legal action. The BC government is still before the courts to challenge the pipeline project. We have all of that for you, and we start tonight with the Prime Minister and his ministers of Finance, Natural Resources, Fisheries, and the Environment, who are all present for the announcement at Ottawa's National Press Theatre today.
Hi, Prime Minister. So yesterday, your government passed a motion declaring climate change a national emergency, requiring emissions to be cut even more than we've already promised. And today, you're approving a pipeline that is potentially going to increase emissions significantly. How do you juxtapose those two things?
Part of our climate plan is having an absolute cap on oil sands emissions from Alberta. This is about how we get our resources to new markets in the most efficient way, getting them to new markets, and making sure that we have money to pay for the transition to a green economy.
And I see a lot of discussion about Indigenous partnerships, Indigenous economic benefits. I don't see a lot of discussion, if any, about the possibility of selling it to other parties. Are we not negotiating with anyone else at the moment?
We have made the decision to purchase the pipeline based on de-risking that pipeline. There was political risks that private sector wasn't willing to take on. So we had to purchase the pipeline, but we have no intention of being the long-term operator of that pipeline. That's why we will eventually sell it, and that's why we're looking at Indigenous participation. Bill, you've been leading on that.
Really not much to add. I mean, the situation now is that we're in the process of moving forward, not in the process of actually engineering a sale. We want to make sure that Indigenous participation, meaningful Indigenous participation, is potentially part of the sale, and we need to work on that to make sure that we have a fair process. But we will be seeking new owners at the appropriate time when the project's de-risked.
Avait voté pour vous en 2015 et elle ne digère pas du tout votre décision d'acheter un pipeline. Comment convaincrez-vous ces gens-là de ne pas tourner le dos au Parti libéral cet automne et de voter plutôt pour le NPD ou le Parti vert?
On a besoin de nouveaux marchés pour nos ressources pendant que le monde est encore dépendant des ressources conventionnelles, et nous avons besoin d'argent pour payer pour l'innovation et la transition nécessaire vers une économie plus verte.
Convaincre que l'environnementaliste qui est frustré contre nous va dire « Ah oui, il faut de l'argent du pétrole pour payer... »
Je pense que les Canadiens comprennent très bien qu'il faut créer de la croissance économique tout en protégeant l'environnement en même temps, qu'on ne peut pas faire l'un sans l'autre. La réalité, c'est qu'il y a des partis politiques et il y a des personnes qui veulent faire semblant qu'on doit choisir l'un ou l'autre, l'environnement ou l'économie. Mais les Canadiens comprennent qu'il faut faire les deux en même temps. On ne peut pas créer un plan économique sans avoir un plan pour contrer les changements climatiques. C'est exactement ce que nous sommes en train de faire.
David Youngren, Reuters.
I got the questions. Just to pick up on Helen's point, I mean, British Columbia could be crucial in the next election. How are you going to win or retain enough votes in that province to stay in power, having just announced you're approving this expansion?
Our focus has been from the very beginning on growing the economy in ways that works for the middle class and on protecting the environment. We have done more to protect the environment than any other government in Canadian history, and we recognize there's more to do, and that's why we're going to continue to have an ambitious plan for the next 4 years that we'll be talking an awful lot about this summer and this fall. But at the same time, Canadians expect to see good jobs and a brighter future for their kids as we manage the transition in a world that is going through rapid changes. We have a plan for that, and Canadians know that we're on the right track.
Secondly, early this afternoon we had a briefing from senior officials. One of them said that the government was fully expecting legal challenges against today's decision. How realistic is it? How can you say that there's going to be construction starting this season if you're being faced with a whole bunch of new challenges?
First of all, we recognize and understand that there are people out there for whom no amount of accommodations or conditions or changes to the plan would have made the purchase of the Trans Mountain Pipeline and the approval of the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion acceptable. Those people will not be convinced by the arguments that we've put forward. We accept that, and they will use the legal means at their disposal to advance that argument. But we also know, from having heard from hundreds upon hundreds of people in consultations, spoken with thousands upon thousands of Canadians across the country in various ways, that people expect us to move forward in ways that both create good jobs for the future and protect our environment for our kids. That's exactly what we're doing today, and that's what we're going to stay focused on.
Marie Maki, La Presse.
Bonjour, M. Trudeau. Quel niveau d'acceptabilité sociale y a-t-il pour ce projet-là, de cette aventure-là au Québec, selon vous?
Je pense que les Québécois, comme tous les Canadiens, comprennent qu'il faut créer une économie plus verte, qu'il faut payer pour cette transition, il faut exporter nos ressources de la bonne façon. Les Québécois sont, je pense, aussi ahuris que les autres Canadiens de voir l'augmentation faramineuse de pétrole par rail qui se passe à travers le pays. Nous avons tous des souvenirs tragiques du pétrole par rail. La réalité, c'est qu'un oléoduc, c'est la meilleure façon, la plus sécuritaire de transporter nos ressources énergétiques. Et c'est exactement ce que les Québécois et tous les Canadiens comprennent. Ils savent qu'on a un plan réel et concret et extrêmement ambitieux pour contrer les changements climatiques et créer une économie plus verte, mais ça prend des ressources, ça prend de l'argent pour pouvoir financer cette transition.
J'ai vu une rencontre du cabinet un peu plus longue que d'habitude aujourd'hui. Jusqu'à quel point est-ce que les ministres sont derrière votre décision, sont unis derrière ça? Et je remarque que Mme Bennett, qui est pourtant responsable des affaires autochtones, n'est pas là. Faut-il en déduire quelque chose?
Je peux vous assurer que si on avait de la place pour tous les membres du cabinet à cette table, tous les membres du cabinet seraient à cette table. Effectivement, on est bien plus que ça, que juste les ministres ici qui sont impliqués dans ce dossier de toutes sortes de façons. Mais je peux aussi vous dire, évidemment, le cabinet est solidaire dans cette décision. Ça fait partie de la promesse qu'on a faite aux Canadiens en 2015 de créer de la croissance économique tout en protégeant l'environnement en même temps et en bâtissant un plan qui va nous amener à un meilleur avenir pour tous, un avenir plus vert, qui a des opportunités pour nos enfants, nos petits-enfants.
David Cochrane, the CBC.
Hi, Prime Minister. There are still some outstanding concerns in the Indigenous communities along the route, including the Coldwater community, which is worried about the pipeline route affecting their water supply. Our understanding from the briefing earlier is that route issue has not been resolved. So what assurances can you give communities like Coldwater that their drinking water is going to be safe?
What the Federal Court of Appeals asked us to do was to go back and do even more consultations and demonstrate that we were taking into account all the very real concerns that various communities had. And that's exactly what we've done. That's exactly what the Minister of Natural Resources has been engaged with over these past months. And Amarjeet, perhaps you'd like to speak directly to the kinds of conversations you've had.
I have met with Chief Lee number of times, and we will continue to work with them, and the corporation will continue to work with them. We know the conclusion of the consultation process does not mean that our engagement with Indigenous community ends. It will continue, and we will continue to explore options with Chief Lee and many of the other Indigenous leaders who still have outstanding issues related to this project.
Understand that you will have consultations, but as of right now, the pipeline route stands, is my understanding, unless there's something we don't know. So are you telling them that the route is going to go where they don't want it to go, or are you open to changing it from this point forward?
There are a number of conversations that are ongoing with his community, and there's a process in place where our teams, as well as the TMC, which is the corporation, that we are exploring options with them on the routing issue, as well as some of the outstanding issues that community has.
Fanny Olivier, Radio-Canada.
Vous avez dit vous-même que, selon vous, la question de l'urne, ça va être l'environnement. Alors, à quel point cette décision-là ne nuit-elle pas à votre crédibilité environnementale et donc à vos chances de réélection cet automne?
Il y a des partis politiques qui prétendent que de s'occuper de l'environnement, ça doit dire qu'on néglige les emplois, qu'on ne se préoccupe pas de la croissance économique et qu'on met notre emphase seulement sur la protection de l'environnement. Il y a d'autres partis politiques qui pensent qu'il faut se foutre complètement de l'environnement et se concentrer seulement sur l'économie. Nous, ce qu'on sait, c'est que non seulement la meilleure façon, c'est de faire les deux en même temps, mais c'est qu'une approche qui se base sur un côté de l'équation sans s'occuper de l'autre ne va pas réussir, ni pour protéger l'environnement, ni pour créer de la croissance économique. Les Canadiens comprennent très bien qu'il faut créer de la croissance et protéger l'environnement. Il faut créer un plan pour l'économie qui comprend que la transformation de notre économie vers une économie plus verte est essentielle pour l'avenir. Et c'est exactement sur ça qu'on est en train de miser. Ce qui a réussi d'abord d'avoir un meilleur bilan environnemental que n'importe quel autre gouvernement canadien et un excellent record économique aussi, où on a vu la création d'1 million d'emplois et qu'on a pu sortir 825 000 Canadiens de la pauvreté.
Est-ce que vous avez des estimations récentes sur combien le projet d'expansion va coûter et en combien de temps vous serez en mesure de l'amortir?
Nous sommes, en ce moment, nous n'avons pas exactement les chiffres, mais nous avons entendu de la compagnie de Trans Mountain que le projet est économique. On va avoir les chiffres plus précis pendant les prochaines semaines. Après, on a une considération des permis qu'on doit avoir. Ça veut dire qu'on a encore des choses à faire, mais bientôt, on va avoir plus d'informations.
Joyce Napier, CTV National News.
Prime Minister, so you bought the pipeline, you approved it. When is construction going to begin?
We have been assured by the company that their plan is to start construction this summer. There are still a number of immediate steps to do in terms of permitting, but the plan is to have shovels in the ground this summer.
Are you expecting more court challenges? And if so, will they stop that construction?
The Federal Court of Appeals provided us with a clear blueprint for how we needed to move forward in a way that both deepened and strengthened consultation with Indigenous peoples and strengthened some of the environmental elements they felt were lacking in the original approval in 2016. We worked with former Justice Iacobucci, with Justice Iacobucci to ensure that we were meeting the high expectations of the Federal Court of Appeal, and we are confident that we have responded to what the court laid out as the right pathway forward towards an approval for this project, and that is the determination we made this morning in Cabinet.
Next question is from Justin from APTN.
Yes, Prime Minister, could you please define free, prior, and informed consent as it was applied to this case in determining whether proper consultations were met?
Well, the essence of the Federal Court of Appeals decision was it's not enough to just speak with or listen to Indigenous communities. We actually have to respond to and work with them to demonstrate that we were making changes based on what they said. that was the recommendation made, and that's exactly what the consultations led to.
Absolutely. Our consultation was very thoughtful, meaningful, two-way, and we listened very carefully to the concerns from the communities. We offered extensive, meaningful accommodations, and the way we responded to NEB 16 recommendations will help us deal with many of the issues that communities have identified, and we are satisfied that we have discharged our duty to consult with Indigenous communities.
We actually made changes to the process, to the NEB conditions based on those consultations, and that is an essential part of free, prior, informed consent.
What is the definition of free, prior, and informed consent then?
It is what we engaged in doing with Indigenous communities over the past number of months. It is engaging, looking with them, listening to the issues they have, and responding meaningfully to the concerns they have wherever possible.
Yes. Sean McCarthy, the Globe and Mail.
You said in French that the goal of the project was not to increase production, and yet there are projections that oil sands production, if new pipelines are built, could increase by 1 million barrels a day from roughly 3 million barrels now. So are you comfortable with that level of increase?
Our plan to reach our Paris targets, which is working and will have us reach our Paris targets, includes an absolute cap on oil sands emissions. That is why we are comfortable that even as we move forward in a world that is continuing to rely on conventional energy for now, while we invest in the future, that we are able to reach those targets even as new resources are developed and old ones go offline. But I'll turn perhaps to Minister McKenna for further talk on Paris targets.
Well, it was extremely important that this project fit within our national climate plan. As the Prime Minister has made clear, it had to fit within the 100 megaton cap for oil sands emissions in Alberta. It was also clear that we needed to have a price on pollution across the country. There are some conservative premiers who don't believe or who believe it should be free to pollute. That's not our approach. And I was also really pleased that all the money from this project will go to fund the clean transition. We have a huge economic opportunity here in Canada. We're blessed with natural resources. Those are resources that are needed for the economy of today, yes, but also for the economy of tomorrow. And we have been investing in this clean transition since we started as a government. We spent over $50 billion in everything from cleaner transportation so people can get around faster, cleaner, cheaper, in phasing out coal while investing in a just transition for workers. The price on pollution, we're giving the money directly back such that 80% of families are better off. We're investing in clean technology, clean solutions, and I think we can stand on our record. We've created more than 1 million jobs with Canadians while having an ambitious climate plan that makes sure that life is affordable for people and also that we're creating good jobs. That's what we need to continue to do. That's what the whole world is working really hard to do, figure out the transition to a cleaner future. This money that will be invested will accelerate that transition, and we're going to continue to work hard. But we've been clear, we are going to meet our target, and then the whole world needs to do more. And we're seeing the impacts of climate change right now. Unfortunately, we have conservative politicians who do not understand that the environment and the economy have to go together, that we have to take ambitious climate action, and we can do it while life is affordable and we create good jobs.
Minister, as a follow-up, would you acknowledge that the increase of export capacity will encourage investment that would increase production in the oil sands, even if that's not perhaps, as you say, the goal of it?
Over the past couple of years, we have seen a near doubling of the amount of oil transported by rail. The question is not whether or not we export our conventional resources, it's where we export them. Right now, we are prisoners to the American market alone, and it's how we export them. We know that rail is both more polluting and more dangerous than a modern pipeline. That is why we're moving forward on accessing new markets and getting more money to invest in the clean energy transition.
Peter Mazur, the Hill Times, please.
Talking about that one buyer problem, is one pipeline going to be enough to solve that problem, or will we need more?
Bill?
Thank you. We're obviously here to talk about the renewed approval for the Trans Mountain Pipeline. We see this as critically important in ensuring that we have access to international markets. We're going to look towards working on this project and working towards a cleaner transition over time. That's an issue that if a proponent decides to bring forward, we'll consider at that time.
And just as a follow-up, if you can't find a buyer for the pipeline right away, next few years, and you're investing all the profits into clean energy projects, how is the government going to pay back to taxpayers the $14 billion it will cost to purchase the pipeline and build the expansion?
That's a lot of hypotheticals. Let me just give you the facts as I see them. We've had numerous outreaches from Indigenous groups that are interested in purchasing this pipeline that have actually worked together with financial backers. We've had corporations that have come to say that they're interested in the potential purchase of the pipeline. We've had our own analysis to say that this project is economic based on every single scenario that we've been presented with. So this is a project that makes good economic sense. It's going to generate significant amount of additional government revenues as a result of the ability to actually collapse some of that discount that we're getting on our current resources. And that's going to be positive for obviously for the long term of our economy, but also for our ability to transition. I'm confident that that the scenario that you're painting is not a scenario that we need to consider at this stage.
Second last question is Alex Ballingall, the Toronto Star, please.
It seemed, no matter which way this decision would go today, that it would inflame the divisions that we've seen. Talk of Alberta separation, talk of potential Standing Rock style protests to this decision. Now that it's been made, how do you sort of cool that down and try and move forward?
I think Canadians can see that we've been entirely consistent in our approach since I gave a speech 6 years ago at the Calgary Petroleum Club, highlighting the fact that you cannot build new energy projects in this country without taking into account environmental concerns and without partnering with Indigenous peoples. That is the way things used to be done. You used to be able to decide where a railroad would go and just build it without consulting anyone along the route. The world has changed, and it's changed for the better. We now need to make sure that we are listening to a broad range of voices and working with people to allay concerns and allay fears and make sure that there are partnerships that ensure that there are benefits for everyone. But we know that there are still going to be people who remain unconvinced. But I also know that the vast majority of Canadians understand that we need to grow the economy and protect the environment at the same time. That is what we made as a commitment to Canadians in 2015, and that is we are going to continue to demonstrate every single day with the decisions this government makes, whether it's on historic levels of protection of marine and terrestrial areas, whether it's moving forward with the price on pollution, whether it's protecting our oceans, whether it's investing in the Coast Guard, or on the other side, whether it's about creating good jobs, creating economic growth, driving down unemployment, making life more affordable for Canadians by lowering taxes and delivering more child benefits. These are the things we committed to Canadians to do, and they're exactly what we're doing.
When do you expect the transition to clean energy, Canada's transition off fossil fuels, to be complete? When do you expect us not to need any fossil fuels?
We recognize that the world is looking towards moving towards more renewable sources, and there are a lot of researchers, innovators, entrepreneurs, scientists trying to develop those next solutions for cleaner energy, for cleaner economies. We believe in investing in those solutions. We believe in facilitating those solutions that are going to be part of the transition. But we know it's not going to happen tomorrow.
La dernière personne sur mon liste, c'est Emily Bergeron de Québecor.
Il y a plusieurs opposants au projet qui vont dire que la décision était déjà prise à l'avance malgré le nouvel examen qui a été fait après la décision de la Cour d'appel fédérale parce que Ottawa a acheté le pipeline, donc il devait faire quelque chose avec. Qu'est-ce que vous répondez à ces gens-là qui vont dire que cet examen-là a servi à rien finalement?
Au contraire, avec la décision de la Cour d'appel, on a regardé de façon attentive les étapes nécessaires pour arriver à une décision aujourd'hui. Aujourd'hui, dans notre discussion, on a regardé attentivement et posé énormément de questions au ministre sur les consultations qui ont été faites, sur les améliorations qu'on a faites au processus depuis 2016, faisant attention particulièrement à ce qui avait été identifié comme lacune dans le processus en 2016. Et on était tous très prêts à dire non, qu'on n'avançait pas si on n'avait pas atteint les attentes qui nous avaient été établies par la Cour d'appel. Donc, on a gardé l'esprit ouvert, on a voulu prendre la bonne décision pour le Canada et on est confiant que c'est exactement ce qu'on a fait.
Il y a une question des accommodements proposés aux communautés autochtones. C'est quoi les principaux accommodements?
On a fait plusieurs changements aux conditions affixées à ce projet, mais on va avoir plus de détails donnés en temps et lieu à ce niveau-là. L'important, c'est de démontrer contrairement aux conservateurs, nous, on ne voit pas ceux qui ont des questions ou des préoccupations par rapport à tout projet comme étant des adversaires. Nous considérons que c'est des partenaires avec qui il faut travailler pour créer de la croissance économique et améliorer notre situation au pays pour les générations futures. Donc, nous les avions écoutés, nous avions travaillé avec eux autant que possible pour résoudre leurs préoccupations, pour tamiser leurs inquiétudes et pouvoir bâtir une solution qui fonctionnera pour tous. Il n'y a aucun grand projet qui va avoir unanimité, mais certainement d'avoir démontré une approche sérieuse qui prend en compte les préoccupations que les gens partagent, c'est ce à quoi les Canadiens s'attendent de nous.
Prime Minister, that's the end of my list. Thank you once again for using the National Press Theatre. Thank you, Ministers.
Thank you, Chris. It's a pleasure to be here.
Happy voting.
Merci tout le monde.
Alberta Premier Jason Kenney is welcoming the federal government's approval of the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion, but he's also critical of what he says is the Trudeau government's mishandling of the energy file. And he's calling for the construction to begin as soon as possible on Trans Mountain. He also called a last time for the federal government to scrap its bills C-69 on environmental assessment and C-48 on a West Coast tanker ban. Here's what he had to say at the Alberta Legislature in Edmonton after the announcement in Ottawa.
The Government of Alberta appreciates the second decision of the federal cabinet to approve the expansion of the Trans Mountain Pipeline. This is a critical project for Canada's economic future, for good jobs, to be able to pay for critical social programs like healthcare and education. It's also a project supported by the vast majority of Canadians, including the vast majority of British Columbians. A poll yesterday indicating that British Columbians support the expansion of Trans Mountain by a margin of 2-1. It's also supported by some 40 First Nations in British Columbia alone and the vast majority of our First Nations communities here in Alberta. But this second approval of the Trans Mountain Pipeline isn't a victory to celebrate. It's just another step in a process that has frankly taken too long. And that's why we'll measure success, not by today's decision, but by the beginning of actual construction and, more importantly, by completion of the pipeline. So we're happy with today's decision, but now let's get it built. The Government of Alberta will do everything we can to support immediate construction and real progress. This is now a test for Canada to demonstrate to the world that we're a safe place in which to invest, create jobs, and build infrastructure. This is a test for whether Canada truly is an economic union, where we can dream big and still do big things. This is a test for our economic future, because right now, without market access to global energy markets, we are massively underselling one of our country's greatest assets. We are massively subsidizing the U.S. economy, and we're abandoning global energy markets to OPEC regimes, to the Russian autocracy, to the Venezuelan dictatorship. That's not good for the world. It's not good for the global environment. Canada's energy producers have demonstrated a growing investment and progress in shrinking their environmental and carbon footprint. In fact, our Alberta energy producers have reduced by about 20% the carbon intensity of a barrel of oil produced in this province, and they're on track to reduce it by another 20% in the years to come. That's because we have one of the most innovative energy industries anywhere in the world. That's why the world needs more Canadian energy, and the completion of the Trans Mountain Pipeline will help that happen. We never should, however, have been so dependent on this one coastal pipeline project. It was the federal government's vetoing of Northern Gateway and the killing of Energy East, together with the surrender to a presidential veto on Keystone XL, that left us holding the bag, quite literally, with taxpayers buying this pipeline. We never should have been put in this position. Unfortunately, the federal government continues with policies that will deepen that vulnerability, seeking to enshrine in law the policies that led to the vetoing of Northern Gateway with Bill C-48, and to enshrine in law the regulations that killed Energy East with Bill C-69. And so we renew our call on the federal government to step back from the negative message sent by these two anti-Canadian energy bills. We renew our call on the federal government, as I did with the Prime Minister earlier today, to listen to 9 of the 10 provinces, to dozens of First Nations, to virtually every major group of employers in Canada, and to the Senate of Canada, by accepting the full suite of constructive amendments to Bill C-69 put forward by Alberta's government and by job creators. We also ask the federal government to hear our plea for fairness in the Federation by abandoning the prejudicial attack on Alberta's economy through the Bill C-48 ban on our energy exports off the North Coast. We've seen a growing number of provinces come together calling for responsible resource development and market access. We look forward to raising these issues at the Council of the Federation in Saskatoon next month. And I've already been, as you know, meeting with premiers from coast to coast to seek support for the idea of a corridor for infrastructure across Canada that can help to get not just this, but other pipelines and other major projects built to ensure our country's prosperity. Our message to our fellow Canadians is this: let's be partners in prosperity. We are fortunate to have some of the greatest reserves of energy on Earth. Let's work together to produce those in an environmentally responsible way so that we do not abandon growing global energy markets to some of the world's worst regimes. We know that the safest way to transport energy, oil in particular, is through pipelines. We also know there have been massive improvements in pipeline technology and safety, as well as marine tanker safety. We acknowledge and thank the federal government for its significant additional investments in marine safety. And we particularly thank the dozens of First Nations who have signed up as partners in the Trans Mountain expansion and who support other forms of responsible resource development, because they want to help to move their people from poverty to prosperity. So we'll continue to champion Aboriginal participation in these critical projects to help our First Nations peoples develop the resources that lie below the ground that their ancestors first inhabited. So again, we are pleased with today's announcement, but today's announcement is not construction and it's not completion. Our message is, let's get the pipeline built. Happy to take any questions.
Premier, what do you think about the reinvestment of money from the pipeline going into renewable sector jobs?
I have no objection. The federal government can decide how it's going to spend its own money. We will certainly be bringing in our own levy on major industrial emissions to support research and development to shrink carbon intensity in our economy. So we have no objection to that.
In connection with this announcement today, the federal government, Justin Trudeau, is still insisting on an oil sands emissions cap. If that does come into place, what does that do to the business case to build other pipelines down the road?
Well, we're a long way from that notional cap, and we do need additional points of egress and additional pipelines. We hope that will happen, first of all, with the Line 3 replacement that would add about 300,000 barrels per day, and with Keystone XL. And as I say, one of the reasons I was just down east is we would like to revive the concept of a sequel to Energy East. So as the industry continues to shrink the carbon intensity of a barrel of Alberta crude, I think we can produce more and ship more without hitting that cap.
Meanwhile, there was a variety of reactions to the approval of the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion from the opposition parties in Ottawa. Conservative Party leader Andrew Scheer welcomed the go-ahead, but he was critical of the Trudeau government's handling of the energy file.
Well, today's announcement should really come as no surprise. After all, this is in fact the third time that the Liberals have approved this project. There was never really any doubt. The real question today is, and the real question Justin Trudeau was unable to answer, is when will the Trans Mountain Pipeline actually get built? After approving the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion in 2016, the Trudeau Liberals failed to demonstrate the leadership and political will to get this pipeline built. By failing to exert federal jurisdiction, Justin Trudeau has ensured that we are in the exact same place as we were in 2016, way back when he approved this project the first time. Les nouvelles d'aujourd'hui ne devraient pas être si surprenantes. Après tout, il s'agit en fait de la troisième fois que les libéraux donnent leur approbation pour ce projet. Tout le monde sait, depuis des mois, que cela allait arriver. La vraie question aujourd'hui, et la vraie question à laquelle Justin Trudeau doit répondre cette fois est, quand va-t-il le faire construire? Let's not forget, the Trans Mountain expansion was supposed to be operating this year. That turned out, like so many Liberal promises, to be not as advertised. And now we are going to miss another construction season. Now, before Justin Trudeau became Prime Minister, we had 3 private companies willing to invest more than $30 billion to build 3 nation-building projects that would have created tens of thousands of jobs and generated billions in economic activity. Those companies, Kinder Morgan, Enbridge, and TransCanada, continue to invest in pipelines, just not in Canada. But Trudeau let the radical anti-energy lobby get in the way of real action that will deliver economic benefit to the entire country. And with the project in jeopardy and with nowhere left to turn, the Liberal government purchased it with $4.5 billion in taxpayer dollars, $4.5 billion of your money. Now, this sent a devastating message to the world and the business community that the only way to get a big project built in Canada is to have the government nationalize it. Under the previous Conservative government, Canada saw 4 major pipelines built without a single cent of taxpayers' money, including one to Tidewater. Unfortunately, the Trudeau Liberals have done everything possible to get in the way of progress. Despite Liberal after Liberal approval, not a single inch of new pipeline has been laid on this project, and not a single ounce of dirt has been moved. And these delays have cost Canadians billions in economic activity. Today's cabinet decision gets us really no closer to having this vital job-creating project than we were when it was first approved 2.5 years ago. We all know what Justin Trudeau's real thoughts about Canada's oil and gas sector and Canada's oil and gas workers really are. Justin Trudeau said he wants to, quote, phase out Canada's oil and gas sector, and he smeared our workers in that industry. For once, for Trudeau, this is all going according to plan. Nous savons tous ce que Justin Trudeau pense réellement du secteur du pétrole et du gaz au Canada, ainsi que des ouvriers. Il veut éliminer le secteur du pétrole et du gaz au Canada. Et il attaque la réputation des ouvriers de la construction. En réalité, tout se déroule comme il le souhaite. But this election campaign, Canadian voters will be presented with a different choice. A different choice that will get pipelines built and deliver real economic benefit to our entire country. Canada's Conservatives will cancel the Trudeau carbon tax. We will repeal the No More Pipelines Bill C-69 and the oil export ban Bill C-48. Les conservateurs du Canada vont annuler le taxe sur le carbone de Trudeau. Nous allons annuler le projet de loi anti-pipeline C-69 et le projet de loi C-48 contre l'exploitation de notre pétrole. We will establish clear timelines for approvals, eliminate foreign interference in the approvals process, and invoke federal jurisdiction when it is in the national interest. Conservatives have gotten pipelines built in the past, and we will do it again. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
The federal NDP did not welcome the approval of the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion. Here is NDP leader Jagmeet Singh with his reaction in Ottawa.
Mr. Singh, Mr. Scheer just stood there and says he doesn't believe Justin Trudeau really wants to build this pipeline, despite the political capital and the actual capital that is expended on it so far. And you're here saying that they're going to ram it through despite any environmental concerns. You can't both be right. Is it possible that maybe he's found a middle ground here in the approach that he's taken, or is he being completely disingenuous?
I don't know how there's a middle ground when you purchase a pipeline and then approve it. It's pretty clear what they're doing. They bought the pipeline, and now they just approved the expansion. So it's clear what they're doing. The Conservatives don't understand the impact to the environment. They don't understand all the fatal flaws with the business case. So it seems to me that they're very short-sighted in their vision. Our plan is very clear. We know that the future is a future where we have access to renewable energy. The future around the world, we're seeing the trends that people are moving towards the electrification of transportation, moving towards electric vehicles, moving towards renewable energy. So let's make those investments and be a world leader. Let's not fall behind. Let's make investments so our economy is forward-thinking, so our economy is long-lasting, is sustainable for the future. That's what our plan is. Let's create thousands and thousands of jobs, fighting climate change, and creating great opportunities for quality work. That's the way forward.
So assuming this pipeline is going to go ahead, as Mr. Trudeau has said, should this be the country's final pipeline of any kind?
Well, our perspective on how we move forward with energy projects has to be, I think, threefold. First off, we have to look at any project and say, does it fit within our plan to reduce emissions? Does it fit within our climate change plan and our plan to attack one of the biggest and most urgent struggles that we're faced with? Secondly, does the energy project create jobs in our communities, in Canada? Does it create local jobs? And finally, does the project respect Indigenous rights? If a project can do all three, then it's a project that can go ahead. If it does not, then it should not go ahead because it does not benefit our planet, it doesn't benefit our country, it doesn't benefit people, and then it should not be going ahead.
So the federal government now owns the existing pipeline and has approved the expansion. If you win government in the fall, what will you do with the pipeline that you own, and what would you do about the approval?
We would not move ahead with this project. We would immediately end any construction and moving forward with this project. Secondly, what we would do is we would evaluate the asset that we have and look to measures that we can take to responsibly move forward in a way that gets rid of this pipeline that Canadians didn't want, Canadians didn't decide to own. That was a very poor decision, a very poor fiscal decision, a very poor financial decision. And we'd assess the value of the asset and make a decision moving forward that we could better use the resources that the Canadians have entrusted us to use.
So just following up with you mentioned getting rid of the pipeline, but we're $4.5 billion taxpayer dollars in. I presume the only way to get rid of it and recoup some of that would be to sell it to someone who wants to use it. Am I wrong?
Well, I would say what we need to do is first find out the have a financial assessment of what the asset is and what the value is. We don't know exactly what we purchase. I don't have all the access to the information around what is exactly that we own and what is its valuation. Once we have the sense of what we own and what the value of that asset is, then we make a determination moving forward. To be clear, this is not a pipeline that I think that Canada should own. It didn't make sense that we own it. Now that we do, we've got to make the best decision that gives the best value for money, that we can move forward in a way that's responsible, that fits within our climate change targets, that fits within our vision for where we need to go as a country. It is not in owning a pipeline. It is investing in renewable energy. We need to make a responsible decision how we, one, immediately end the further expansion, and secondly, how we assess the value of this asset and move towards a direction where we're not contributing to climate change, where we're actually moving towards investing in renewable energy.
Can I just add something? I mean, we're losing $150 million a year. So Mr. Scheer and Mr. Trudeau would love to continue to send good money after bad. And that's got to be part of our financial evaluation.
So I think our last question is Bruce Campion-Smith of the Toronto Star.
Mr. Singh, good afternoon. Just wondering in the short term for your party and other opponents of the pipeline, is this a done deal, this announcement today, or do you see other recourse to either through the courts, through civil disobedience to stop this?
There's an ongoing question that's in front of the Supreme Court that's been put to the Supreme Court by the government of BC. That is one tool that remains. The outcome of that will determine, will have an impact on whether this project can go ahead. I know there might be other considerations in terms of other legal tools that communities can bring forward to raise concerns around the project. If we were government, we would not go ahead with this and we would oppose it. We are hoping that this is something that weighs into the minds of voters in the election, that they know that with New Democrats, they can be assured that this is not something that we believe in. We do not believe that this is the right direction for our country, that risking the sevenfold increase in tanker traffic is not the right choice, that putting the coast at risk is not the right decision, and that risking thousands of jobs in tourism and fisheries is not the right way to go. So people can have the confidence if they vote New Democrat, they'll know that we are opposed to this and we will not go ahead with it.
As follow, if there was a minority government elected in October and your party was in place to perhaps support sort of minority government, would you make the stopping the expansion of the pipeline a condition of your support?
I don't want to presuppose the outcome of the election. I'm looking to form government and to become prime minister and have some ministers standing behind me. But I can tell you that our values are this, that we would not go ahead with this project. We would not allow this project to continue. That is what we would do in any shape or form the government takes. As government, that would be our decision.
Federal Green Party leader Elizabeth May was disappointed by the Trudeau government's approval of the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion. She described it as an environmental setback. Here is what she had to say to reporters in Ottawa.
Last night, we voted in Parliament that we're in a climate emergency. We talked about what it means to hold to no more than 1.5 degrees Celsius, the urgency of that. We talked about the fact that the current target in which the Government of Canada is operating is completely inconsistent with holding to no more than 1.5 Celsius global average temperature increase. It needs to be said that for what Prime Minister Trudeau put forward today to work, he's betting against Paris working. There's no way to build an additional pipeline, more fossil fuel infrastructure, for exporting raw bitumen out of this country. There's no way that works without expanding the oil sands. He admitted as much in his response to you when he said, well, within our Paris goals, we have a cap on the Alberta oil sands. It can't be said often enough or loudly enough that when Justin Trudeau or Catherine McKenna talk about their Paris targets, they are not talking about what we agreed to do in Paris. The Paris Agreement, the treaty, is clearly about holding global average temperature increase to no more than 1.5 degrees Celsius and as far below 2 degrees as possible. The information around which we first debated that we had an emergency motion October 15th in Parliament in response to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report. What that report told us that we didn't know in Paris was that 2 degrees is far too dangerous. That at 2 degrees, we risk going into, well, past tipping points that lead us into self-accelerating, unstoppable, runaway global warming that undermines the very foundations of human civilization and leads to the extinction of millions of species. The IPCC report was hopeful in that it told us it's not too late. You can hold global emissions to no more than 1.5 degrees Celsius, but not on our current trajectory. It calls on us to go off fossil fuels 100% by 2050 and use dramatically less by 2030. Justin Trudeau's much vaunted cap on oil sands emissions, which was agreed to with Rachel Notley, so who knows if it has any status with Jason Kenney, involves an increase in emissions in the oil sands. Far from cutting emissions, it goes from 70 megatons a year with a cap at 100 megatons a year. I think what made me so angry was the cynicism of the bait and switch that every dollar that we make on this pipeline will go to green energy projects. Where are the dollars coming from to build the pipeline that we object to so strenuously in British Columbia? They come from our own public resources. This is public money, $10 to $13 billion additional on top of the $4.5 billion they already squandered buying a 65-year-old pipeline. They will build a pipeline to blow through our Paris targets, use our own money to do it, and then try to trick us by saying every dollar made on this project, as if there's ever going to be a profit, that's another question, is going to go to clean energy projects. C'est clair que maintenant nous sommes dans une situation d'urgence climatique, pour laquelle raison j'ai aucune idée pourquoi M. Trudeau ne comprend pas les niveaux d'urgence, ne comprend pas qu'on doit agir, on doit éliminer les émissions de gaz à effet de serre. But he's playing a shell game. Look here, look there, now you see it, now you don't. We'll take public funds, and some years from now, some may trickle down to clean energy. The insult to First Nations, and that was clear when he couldn't answer the question, does this meet the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People to free, prior, and informed consent? How could it? They keep approving the pipeline, declaring it will be built, over the objections of First Nations. Today from Vancouver, the Union of BC Indian Chiefs, the Chief Lee George Wilson of the Tsleil-Waututh announced they'll be going back to court. He said, we don't stand for oil. We're here to protect water and our land and life. So this is not over. This pipeline will not be built. The protests in British Columbia that you will see will rival anything that's occurred, including Clayoquot Summer of 1993. We know that diluent mixed with bitumen can't be cleaned up. We know we're in a climate emergency. Our government has betrayed us, and worse than that, they've betrayed their own children.
In Vancouver, a number of Indigenous leaders met with the media to give their reaction to the federal government's approval of the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion. They pledged to continue their opposition to the pipeline expansion, and they said they'd do so through civil disobedience and further legal challenges.
Greetings to our honored guests and my dear ones. I have good feelings in my heart to see all of you. I'd like to acknowledge my council that stands with me at this podium, thanking our brother Ruben for his words, and for all the work that he's done on behalf of Tsleil-Waututh in this struggle, because it is a struggle. Today's decision was not unexpected. It was disappointing, but it wasn't unexpected. This moment feels really familiar. It feels exactly like the moment those years ago, the first time that Canada approved this pipeline. And then we went to the Federal Court of Appeal and we won. And Canada was tasked with going back and redoing that consultation. Canada repeated many of the same mistakes as last time. And further, the federal government is in a conflict of interests as the owner regulator, and enforcer, as well as the fiduciary for the First Nations, and not just for First Nations, for all of you taxpayers that are paying for this pipeline. The federal government's decision to buy the pipeline and become the owner makes it impossible to make an unbiased, open-minded decision. TWN, after consultation with our community and our council, we will be appealing this decision to the Federal Court of Appeal. We believe that the consultation once again missed the mark set by the Supreme Court of Canada, and we will defend our rights. TWN continues to withhold our free, prior, and informed consent and are prepared to use all legal tools to ensure our governance rights are respected. Our obligation is not to oil. Our obligation is to the land, to the water, to our people, to the whales you see pictured on this poster, remembering the mother whale that carried her dead calf on her head for 17 days. She was bringing us a message. To that family of orcas that came into Burrard Inlet and were right in front of Westridge Marine Terminal. That family was bringing us a message. That family was coming to say to us that they are still here. We are still here. Our obligation is to protect that family. Yesterday, they talked about how there was a climate emergency, and today they're announcing the approval of a pipeline. It doesn't matter that there are conditions today with the approval. The conditions don't meet or don't take away Tsleil-Waututh's concerns. It doesn't reduce the risk to Tsleil-Waututh. And for these reasons, Tsleil-Waututh Nation is still standing against Trans Mountain Expansion Pipeline Project. I'd like to thank all of the people that are standing with us today, thanking all of you that have sent messages of hope, of strength, of solidarity with our people in this struggle. Our obligation is not to oil. Heitsepka, thanking all of you.
Well, that's all for another edition of Primetime Politics on CPAC, the cable public affairs channel. I'm Martin Stringer. Thanks for watching.